Well, there's no AAA titles on this show, but there is a lot of discussion about how so many teams suck. It's a very negative episode of League Weekly, starting now. That's right. Welcome, everyone, to the live E3 coverage for Yahoo Esports. We're going to be talking about indie games, esports, and more.
Pirates.
No, just kidding. This is actually League Weekly. Yeah, there's a little event happening in our town right now, but we don't really care about that because it's mostly just dance videos and sports games and
gameplay footage featuring 1 second of gameplay and the rest slow-mo cutscenes.
Yeah. You don't want that. What you want to know is League of Legends stuff, and that's what we're here to provide. I was in Vegas this weekend, so these guys are going to have to tell me what happened. But let's go ahead and introduce everybody, starting off with Mark Zimmerman, the analyst for Echo Fox Delta, the Delta Fox
Who knows
team.
anymore?
Yeah.
Oh, I definitely don't.
Okay. That was a short stint.
I didn't mean that. I meant like...
Fired. I don't know.
Oh, really? Wow. Okay. This is on Reddit?
This is his announcement.
Yeah, no.
His pick ban was so bad. That
Oh, yeah. I was in charge of that.
yeah,
I
saw you getting flamed for that.
I think they were... I hope they were kidding. I think
they
kidding.
were.
I think I was getting trolled. Yeah, I was on the analyst desk this weekend for the NA LCS. Tend to do that.
Yeah.
That's all I've done. I've just been really busy with that, this show, my other shows, as well as doing some of the Delta Fox stuff.
Yeah. You're a showman.
I'm a showman.
Yep.
No substance.
That's true. Emily.
Yes.
How was your week?
It was great.
Yeah.
I watched a lot of League of Legends.
Yeah.
I feel like you asked me this.
I do, and I don't know why.
One week something's gonna be different, and
Yeah.
you'll like. I went outside.
I think. I think there was one week that I played Persona 5, and you guys were like, "Whoa, okay."
So now, when I ask you what you did this week, you're like, "Well, a couple of weeks ago, I played Persona 5.
I played some Persona 5, and it was great. Yeah.
That's we might just need to revoke your introduction at the beginning because it's just
Emily is still here.
I think we lose viewers every time.
Oh, it's true.
And finally, from beautiful Shanghai, China, we have Kelsey Moser.
Beautiful this time of year.
Is it?
No, it's actually really, really hot and miserable, but it's still fun because I get to every weekend harass poor Chinese teams with my terrible Chinese questions. And I say terrible Chinese questions because my Chinese is terrible, not my questions.
Yeah. Oh, your questions are good? It's just the delivery of them that is flopping?
Yes. It's like, what did you say? Did you just insult my mom? Hello?
Yeah. Well,
Little do they know that's just who I am,
We're off to a great start on this show. All right. So let's talk a little bit. So I was myself in Vegas for a bachelor party for my dear friend Kelby May, who's getting married next month. I won't talk about what happened there.
Because what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Because it was actually just not that exciting episode. Pretty chill. We went and saw a show. Either way. But I did miss what was happening at NA LCS. And yet, while all that was happening, I was still trying to keep track of this, watching on Twitter and elsewhere and popping it on Twitch. And I saw some very strange things I did not expect. So maybe you guys can we haven't talked about this yet, maybe you guys can kind of catch me up on why I saw some really unusual things.
I don't know how well we'll do saying why. And I actually don't even think...
Okay, so Envy beat... Immortals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Envy is actually right now. Okay, so right now, in my opinion, it's only 2 weeks in, so it's really difficult to evaluate teams. But they look like one of the better teams in the league right now.
Yeah, I think they're top half. When you look at their season last split, where they had like an insane number of best of three, like go to full 3 games. They had a decent game record actually.
Weren't they one game away from getting relegated? I think they were one game away from getting relegated.
They were one game. So was TL with Doublelift. Oh well, they didn't get relegated. They were one game away to losing to Envy or GCU to get it out. I guess. Well, either way.
But I mean, this is actually what I thought you were talking about. In the regular season, it came down to the wire in terms of whether they'd even be in the promotion tournament or not.
Yeah, because it was Echo Fox was in 8th, but they almost lost their spot to both TL and, if things broke right, Envy. And even then, like, Envy still got monster leads every game, and then they threw them away. And it's like, man, if this team ever just figured it out in the slightest, they're easily like an out of relegations team. And if they figure it out decently well, then they're suddenly a playoff team probably. And Pyrion's really good for them. Apollo's stepping up, and Lyra, for the most part, still Lyra. He did have a bad series that they won versus Team Liquid, and that's kind of like one of the first times we've ever seen Lyra just look bad.
I think that's really important, though, because if that team, and some of it didn't always come off of like these huge early game leads like we're used to seeing from them. So if they can actually communicate well enough to overcome a deficit and actually close out games, like you said, I think that's a really good sign for the team. I also think it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Pyrion and Niski, because I know they had said previously that Niski was coming in for week 3, and I'm not sure. Obviously, I'm not on the team, so I don't know how the scrims are going to go, but like Pyrion is really good at setting up for Lyra. And I think that if I was looking at this team, I'd keep Pyrion in, which definitely isn't something I thought I'd be saying at the beginning of the split because I wasn't high on either of these mids going in.
Oh, sorry. Peter is calling me right now on Facebook Messenger.
So we'll keep the show going. You can move away from the microphone.
Hi, I'm live on the air right now doing a episode of League Weekly. How can I help you, Peter? Yes.
Yo, wait, you can kind of hear him if you put the ear thing.
Yeah, you're on the show. I don't know if they can pick you up. Maybe I can put you on speakerphone. Okay, you're on the show.
All right, well, dude, Kelby's in town for E3. You want to get dinner today?
Maybe. I'll figure it out. Can I call
First
you back?
live call into the show, Yahoo League Weekly.
Can I call you back after the show?
Doublelift, what are your thoughts on Envy?
Will come for, you know?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You're just going to do me like that?
Okay.
Doublelift, what do you think about Envy? Are they legit or is it?
Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Sometimes you have to take these calls. All right. Either way. So.
Travis's dinner plans. This is like why I tune every week.
Should I get dinner with Peter? That's the new topic. No?
I heard he's a boring dinner date.
Yeah, that's true.
So on the side of Envy, I'm a little scared for Pyrion because he keeps getting Talia, and he's shown that like not only is he good at it in lane and early roams and team fights, but he also uses it like to wall off objectives properly. So like that's just a really good champ for him. And his Ahri has been like a little hit or miss, and then we haven't seen really anything else out of him. So maybe he gets taken off that. And then their strength of schedule so far, like hypothetically, is pretty weak, playing teams like Envy, and then I think they beat Echo Fox and P1 or something. They haven't beaten very many impressive teams.
Yeah, they went 2-1 against Jig and lost. And then they beat P1, they beat Immortals, and they beat Liquid. So it depends on how you think of Immortals.
Which I think maybe we overhyped them a little bit, or not you obviously, but I probably overhyped them a little bit in week 1 just because they beat TSM and it looked pretty good when they did it. But that could, there are things such as flukes, and sometimes if a fluke happens in week 1, you overrate a team.
Kelsey, do you have a take on this stuff?
I mean, I was just going to say, and Niski can play Orianna, so between the two of them, they can almost survive the first ban phase. It's really good. Okay, I think Envy is really interesting. I mean, I don't have a lot to say, but I think that's something that's really important is just keeping mid pressured and mid pushed out, and so just like being willing to experiment in that regard can kind of make a team look a lot better if the region itself has been kind of wonky lately, and a lot of the games have been really questionable. So I'm really hesitant to say that any team in NA is like definitively top team right now, even. So like top half team or bottom half team, especially if they're on the cusp. Like I feel Envy is kind of on the cusp of top half if they're top half.
So. All right. So then also this weekend, there were some other strange things. Didn't TL beat Dig?
Yes, and in the sense that, like, oh my God, TL is the worst team in human history, like that kind of perspective, seeing them win a series is probably surprising. But
yeah, but also Dig had, like, both. The weird thing going into this is that Dig and Immortals both looked good, right?
Well, we were just coming into this weekend, yeah, like you saw Immortals beat TSM, you looked pretty good. I don't think anyone was, like, super hyped on Dig last
I think
week.
Dig still has the issue that they... and I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, but when I look at their team fighting and when I look at how they try to pressure the map, I still think they're heavily reliant on Someday doing well. And if Someday doesn't do well, it's not good for them.
Shrimp subbed him this week. He did like some super, I won't say cheesy, but like if it misses, you get set far behind ganks. And for the most part, they worked out. This series versus TL, one didn't work out, and TL was actually able to use that to kind of I think they won that game, right? Where he went bottom and Rainover came and they got like 1 for 2'd.
Yeah.
And then there was also when Chaser subbed back in.
I was going to say they also subbed back in.
Yeah, Chaser subbed back in, and then he died in Rainover's jungle, and then Dig's bot lane made like the dumbest trade in human history also. So like there was a lot of stuff going on this series where you're just like, wow, Dig is playing exceptionally bad, and like Team Liquid is looking a little bit better, so they were able to capitalize and actually win the series.
Yeah.
So like it wasn't like, if you watch that series, like super surprising that Dig lost, and it wasn't like, wow, what happened to Dignitas? It was just like, why would your bot lane walk up to trade with the jungler sitting in lane visibly after you dodge the gank, and then you flash in aggressively? It was like horrible to watch.
We're going to talk about P1 and TSM in a second, but I do want to ask, is there anything else about this weekend that was interesting that, you know, as I as someone who missed it, that you guys would talk about?
Well,
and when we were at lunch, it seemed like you guys were kind of down on the weekend as a whole.
Well, I just didn't think it was actually that crazy as you seem to think, because for the most part, it's like CLG and TSM are our best two teams. You could probably say that pretty confidently after this weekend.
You'd say TSM is?
Yeah.
I mean, they're 2-2.
Okay.
There are 3 teams that are 3-1.
Okay.
You just mean just looking at them?
Yeah, I
mean, they lost a game this weekend.
Yeah, they lost to Dig. They lost a series to Dig, and then Dig lost to TL. So what does that say? Dig's probably pretty erratic, and so is TSM. But I think what you would say is like the C9 victory over Echo Fox is probably the one that, if you haven't watched it, is like, ugh. Where both...
Oh, God. Yeah, that series was bad.
Because you're like, oh, man, C9 TO'd or 2-0'd Echo Fox. That's what you would expect. But one is like a 60-minute, longest game of the split so far, where like Echo Fox could have ended the game 4 different times with their 1-3-1. They never did it. They never pulled the trigger. C9, after crawling back in the game, play it decently well. And then the second one is like they fall 6 or 7K down by 20 minutes and then instantly win the game 3 minutes later for the fastest game of the split. And you're just like... C9 looks bad and Echo Fox looks worse.
Yeah. Is this not the way all NA LCS splits start, though? Where everybody, it's like, oh, man, it's all close and there's so much action and some of these teams suck. And then by like week 4, we'll be like, okay, these are the top teams, these are the bottom teams, and it'll stay that way.
I mean, it's kind of like that already, right? With like P1, FlyQuest, TL, I think most people would say like they're probably still your bottom 3 teams. Yeah. And I think you would say C9, TSM, and CLG are probably your top 3 teams, and everyone else is in the middle.
Kelsey, you had something.
I mean, I think that last year it sort of stayed that way with the illusion of parity for a really long time.
Last
right?
year or last split?
Or last split, excuse me. It sort of stayed that way with the illusion of parity for a really long time. So I didn't find it that surprising. I think that with Doublelift back and the TSM under pressure, like we always expect TSM to be a top teams, but it's not surprising to see them struggling with like which side of the map they're going to play around now, and having like Hanser sort of struggle a little bit more with a lot more pressure bot and the way that the team is flowing and things like this. So I think that it's not surprising to see TSM like this, and they'll probably pull ahead and still be one of the top teams. I don't think they're playing necessarily like one of the top teams, but I don't know who is, so it's kind of a moot point. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah.
All right, moving on to the next topic, which is specifically P1, which I believe is the only team in NA LCS right now that has not won a match.
0-4.
Okay. So, Mark, this is your topic. You want to go ahead and introduce it?
Yeah, so 0-4 is obviously a bad spot to be in, but I think P1, you could say, is in an even worse spot just because Shady was the support. They used 3 supports last split. They end up settling on Shady, who was a rookie, and there was kind of this idea that Arrow liked playing with him more, even if he's maybe slightly worse than some of the other ones. He should develop and become better, I think was kind of the line of reasoning you heard out of the P1 guys when they were saying why they went with him. You also have a Nori back in full-time, and things start going horribly wrong. They put Meteos back in. It looks slightly better for a little bit before they keep losing games. And the question is, if you're P1, what do you do here? Because you were the 3rd place team last split, and you look nothing like that anymore. You have a jungler in Meteos who doesn't play the game seriously and doesn't really aspire to like be the best the way a lot of people do. The jungler who does have those aspirations seems to not work with the team. Your bot lane is now feeding all the time. And to round things out, I would assume morale is dropping quickly because their pick ban in the last game was like, what is this? This just looks like some people are tilted and they're like, give me Urgot top, give me Lucian mid. Let's make an all physical damage marksman team comp with no tank and like only skill shot line CC, single target.
So what is the difference between this team and the team that looks so good or reasonably good at playoffs in Vancouver? Like, what went wrong?
It's hard to say. You could maybe point to the support meta changing a little bit, whereas previously it was kind of like supports pick Lulu Karma and they trade a little bit in lane, and it's hard to really make a ton of plays or get exploited too hard, and Arrow gets out of lane and then he's like a monster because he's not shackled by like his bad supports or something. And Inori was playing better. I don't know. It's a little hard to tell because the only big difference is the fact that you now are playing with Shady. He was playing then as well. So maybe it's meta stuff, but it's hard to say. And that's why the question I'm posing is, if you are P1, what do you do here? Do you say, all right, we're not even winning with Meteos, really, so let's get rid of him and just focus on fixing our issues internally? Do you start looking for other roster swaps to make? Obviously, they're using both import slots with Ryu and Arrow, so they don't have that much freedom in terms of like trying to find stuff, as well as it's pretty difficult right now. So that's the question I'm posing to the other experts.
Yeah, that's really tough. But just because it's obviously not like I don't even necessarily think it's fair to say, oh, like Shady is obviously the problem.
Oh, right,
like
yeah.
Get rid of that guy, because even though I wasn't impressed with them when they played with him last split, I actually thought their weakest games were then, because when P1 really worked, they would set up a 1-3-1 in the mid game, but it would be off of the fact that Arrow and whoever he was laning with would be getting so much pressure bot that they'd always come out ahead going into mid game. And the rest of the team would kind of flex around that. Even when even when they swapped up junglers, I think they were really heavily reliant on Arrow getting those early leads. And now that they're not, like that's a huge issue for their setup. But then they also, as a team, don't move together whatsoever. They don't seem to know how to even go about setting that up. Neither jungler has communicated particularly well with the lanes, although obviously we have like a very small sample size thus far in the split. So it's obviously like, it's weird because I think one of the things that people praised P1 for last split was getting through the split looking so good, even with all of these internal issues. So now it just seems like all of that's catching up to them at the beginning of this split.
I think you played these Doran's Shield hyper carries, okay, in the bottom lane. You just sit there and you let the Doran Shield sustain, arrow up, whatever, it's fine. And then you try to get a lead topside, because topside is really interesting, where if you have a strong matchup and you're just pushed out and you don't, and the enemy team doesn't have a lease, then you can actually transition like a ton of topside pressure mid. And I think you have to sort of play off that and control the top side of the map, and then like hope that the hyper carry, AD carry in the bottom lane survives. And with Doran's Shield, it's really possible. So like that's kind of a recommendation I would give, where you just like sit under your turret, and then maybe even like Shady just plays Blitzcrank, okay, or something like that. And they sit under turret, and if they come and try to dive or get close, you just like hook them, and that's all he has to do. He can just sit there. It's fine.
What about, I assume, would you guys go back to Inori or keep Meteos in? Because if you want to play around topside, the weird thing is like how Inori and like Zig kind of have like backward synergy, where both of them kind of want to play like more squishy champions. Like obviously they're picking Kha'Zix with Inori, which they don't do at all with Meteos. And, you know, Zig is taking Gragas top, which they didn't do at all when Meteos is on like the tankier champion. So I assume you probably want to put Inori in just because he actually seems committed to like wanting the team to improve and do better, versus Meteos, who's just kind of there like, I'm playing in the LCS, woohoo.
It probably depends on your goals, right? Like Meteos seems like you have a higher peak as a team, or sorry, a lower peak as a team with Meteos, because he's never going to put in the effort that other people are. Or like he's not looking to make it to Worlds probably. Whereas Inori is, but that's like a higher risk, right? Because this guy hasn't meshed well with the team to date. So if you are the owners or whoever's running the team and you say like, all right, what are our goals? Like how much are we willing to risk to try to get to Worlds this split? Or how much of it is just us looking like a competitive enough team that, our chances of making it into the franchise system next year, you probably go, you decide based off of that.
And I would assume that's Inori in that case because, they're still losing with Meteos.
Yeah, at this point, it's not. So previously, I think people put a lot on Meteos just because he was a little bit safer. Inori, first of all, got a huge buff from the champions that were super strong at the beginning of last spring, which was Rengar and Kha'Zix. And then you had Meteos, who was just a more stable jungler, so he wouldn't go for a lot of these forced invades that Inori would go for, which are high risk, high reward plays. And when Inori failed at those, he would keep pushing, which would either swing things in their direction or would get an even higher deficit. And Meteos is a lot more stable, which I think is why a lot of their wins came from that. But at this point, I don't see why you just don't try to concentrate with Inori, because it's not like that's working anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's interesting. I feel.
Yeah, I'm sad too.
P1 were the only team that knew how to 1-3-1 competently last split.
And
I'll stand by that. And they're now there's no one.
They were different too. It wasn't CLG, TSM, C9. They were
FlyQuest is different.
Sort of. If you don't count C9 from season 3. And you put some wings on their logo and make it yellow.
Hey, Moon is not. He was not on that team.
Okay, one guy. Different. Now they have Turtle again. Anyways, I liked P1 just because they were different. They were really nice org, and it felt like hopefully we see some people pushing into that upper echelon of teams, and then to come out so flat this split with problems that seem deeper rooted than we're just not playing well right now. The way that you could say is kind of TSM's problem.
Yeah,
it's scary.
Yeah. Well, I actually wish that we would just at the end of every episode or midway through every episode just have an updated power rankings or percentage chance that any of these teams make it into the NA LCS next year through the franchising thing. It's all right, we've dropped P1 down 10% because now they've lost all their games. That's not going to be attractive on an application. Be kind of funny. All right. Finally, on the topic of teams that are sucking, Kelsey to talk. I mean, that is kind of what all the topics are about this week, right? Kelsey's got 4 teams that are sucking, surprisingly.
Yeah, so almost all of the teams that I'm going to bring up, which are the teams that went to MSI, are expecting extremely long seasons where ideally, we have our spring split, we win our spring split, we go to MSI, we come back and we have our summer split, we win our summer split, or we do super well at the summer split and we go to Worlds. We win Worlds, yes, and then we go home. So that was slightly awkward. But the point is that TSM, Flashwolves, G2, and SKT have all had slow starts. WE were embarrassed. They were extremely embarrassed. And so they are basically destroying people in LPL right now. But otherwise, the other 4 teams are all looking really weird. And with Flashwolves, I actually went back and watched their games, and week 2, they had 2 of their players suspended for Facebook violations or something like this. But, I mean, their problems weren't necessarily related to these 2 players because, top was bad. But the bottom lane was still doing fairly competently and things like this without Betty. So I think the question is, and then G2 had subs the first week. TSM said, we're going to take it easy. We're not going to learn the meta. G2 said, we're going to give our Koreans some extra vacation time. SKT acknowledged that maybe they wouldn't be really good right away and things like this. So the question is if you have a system where your best teams feel like they don't have to care that much about the first couple weeks of summer split, right? If that's the system and they're already buying in and they're saying we're so much better than the rest of the league that it doesn't matter, we're going to call this the summer vacation period. And if that exists, is your system fundamentally flawed?
Okay,
and how do you fix it?
I feel like it is flawed, but I don't think it's for I don't think that they're we can just take this time off because we don't care. I think they are taking this time off because they need to, because they were at MSI, and we talked about this before everybody went to MSI.
What? I don't think she's saying that it's a bad thing. I think she's more implying that because these teams are giving
so
their
much
players breaks,
better, right?
Yeah, and
The
they
rest of
still
the
aren't
league.
like we're still expecting all of these teams to do well in their regions.
I think it's like
We're
3.
still expecting these teams, most of these teams, to win. I'm not sure
Yeah.
about Flash Wolves right now, but we're still expecting most of these teams to win. And that's the issue, is that we see these teams, they might not look super good right now, but where they were at the end of spring was just like so far ahead that they really, really can get away with like not coming in knowing the meta right away and stuff like this. And I think that's an interesting thing to discuss, in addition to the fact that the split is super long in general. Like, I feel like there are two issues here. One is that there are just like super, super dominant teams that can get away with taking some extra time off when they need to, and like there are no built-in breaks. So
Right.
for SKT's part, this is something that they've done in the past, and also it's something that, like, because they're the best organization in the world, they also, you see them swapping their players around sometimes. So like, for example, I don't know if it was to give people a break or not. Obviously, they'll say it's based on scrim results, but their last series, they 2-0'd Everett 8 winners, and they played Untara and Blank both times, which are obviously two players that were not at MSI. Untara wasn't even on the team at the time. I think that, so like, you're speaking to someone who is actually, like, in my case, I am actually not a huge fan of the league system as opposed to the tournament system. While I think it had its own issues, my favorite, like, iteration of any, like, I guess seasons of League of Legends was the OGN Champions tournament system, which was not a league setup. It was 4 groups, and then you had best of 2 group stage, and then a drawing for playoff seeding. I think that this is something that has been an issue since the league system was introduced, like, across the board to normalize things between all regions. But I also don't want to come out and say, like, oh, the answer is, like, these international tournaments take too long or blah, 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 because, like, in my opinion, we also don't have enough international tournaments as it is. So it's a really tricky situation, in my opinion.
I think, obviously, I'm a more North American biased, watching traditional sports previously, and I think, like, the old tournament structure that OGN had its own problems where, like, bad teams barely got to play, and you just lost and you were knocked out, and it's like, there's your OGN season.
And that's a fair critique, because they'd immediately drop to NLB, and then that's
they're
where
playing
they
in
play
that.
the rest of their games.
But you're no longer playing, like, great teams. You're
Yeah.
probably not getting scrims anymore, and it had its own problems for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it seems. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go for it, Travis.
Oh, you're really energetic today.
Had
much
a
Red Bull.
had an energy drink.
All I was just going to say was I feel like it's like crazy that we go from having a conversation about, well, these 4 teams are taking it slow the first couple of weeks after going through this giant gauntlet, meaning like, and now it's time to abolish the league system. Like, it's broken. Take us back to international tournaments.
I mean,
LCS is flawed. Like,
that's not what I said, but my point is more
that was my interpretation of what you said.
Wow. My point is more that, like, it's also that, so in traditional sports, if you're going to bring up the traditional sports system, especially if you look at, I would say baseball is my favorite sport to look at. There are so many games. I know you guys are like,
I like
what?
baseball.
I think that's one of the most universally critiqued sports.
Yeah. Well, no, here's my point is that a lot of the games there's a lot of games.
There's
and
way too many games.
not a lot of them are going to matter.
You play 2 games a day sometimes in that.
There's no way you can tell me that those teams go into every game being like, we are here to win, etc. And so I think that, like, if you're going to make that traditional sports comparison, all I'd say is that you have to include that problem as well.
Yes, and I think
because that is a huge problem with the league system.
so. That's what I was going to say. Is I think there's 3 things at play, which is 1, the season's too long and players get burnt out. They need to find a break somewhere, and if you're a good team, that break doesn't exist, except maybe after Worlds. There's a small one, but you're in the middle of the split right now, and you can't get a break. 2, I think that you do end up where the summer split obviously matters the most, But if you end up a little slow at the beginning and you are one of these super teams, you will bounce back most likely.
And then you always have the playoffs as long as you get top 6.
Yeah, as long as you can get top 6. But obviously, all these guys are aiming higher than top 6. But if they come out a little slow because Bjergsen wanted to not have his arms fall off from playing too much and scrimming all the time and grinding solo queue, that's fine. Same with like Faker and any of these guys that they need to take a break sometimes, even physically and mentally. So like those two things, I think. And there's one other point that I lost along the way. Whatever.
Probably wasn't good.
No, I doubt it. Yeah. Either way, like it's not like the league system has its own problems with like taking up too much time, but it's that I think it's also like we said, like you don't necessarily need to win right away in week 1 where it's like these are tantamount games, and that's always kind of the case because it's not just for top end teams that the league system exists; it's for bottom end teams as well to improve and try and get better. So like Envy. Maybe this is really important for them to have this time to actually find out between Pyrian and Niski who is the best mid laner for them. Or if you're P1, it's like, oh my God, we came out slow. If you're in the tournament structure of something, you're just out of the tournament now.
Yeah.
And you get into these kind of situations where it doesn't favor the bottom end teams, though it's totally fine for top end teams.
Yeah. Kelsey, I mean, you brought this topic up. What do you think of everyone's comments and response?
I mean, I always just feel like we don't actually need this many games in general, on stage games specifically. So I would even suggest something like, do we go back to, do we have like a single round robin system where there is more time for breather and the stage matches matter more, but you still have like time where you can scrim a lot or things like this. So like I think these types of questions are interesting to ask. So that's why that's part of why I brought it up. The other issue is this, it's just like you have these top teams who are incentivized to really, really come out swinging at the beginning, but then you also have these bottom teams who maybe are also feeling like a little bit dragged on, and then they have the drag of like not doing as well and wondering like, does it even, like how much can we even get out of this? So the gap in and of itself stays the same because they have all of these extra time. So I'm not sure that the extra time is actually helping the bottom teams catch up, if that makes sense.
I think we need to go back to best of ones. Right?
I actually wouldn't 100% mind best of ones.
Yeah, there we go. Another convert for League Weekly.
I don't think they're good. Like I think best of twos are better, but obviously there's the entertainment factor that comes with best of threes, and then people feel more satisfied with best of threes. But because I think you can do best of ones and then still do best of threes and best of fives and scrims, but it's like, again, do we then look at the scrim system and say the scrim system is flawed? Is it okay that the scrim system is flawed? So this is like a really big topic, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. I think the biggest thing, I mean, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but I brought up the best one thing, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it is interesting to me that we switched from best of ones to best of threes, and there was just no change in the schedule to accommodate it, right? Like it's still the same number of weeks, et cetera, et cetera.
We added another stream.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's we're not
in North America only. So
Yeah.
For Europe, for like a split, but no.
Yeah, I think you could definitely make the argument there's too many games, and I know a lot of fans don't like the group system. I personally kind of like groups.
I like the
Actually,
combo
really-
system a lot, actually.
I like the group system.
Yeah, I think with promotion relegation, it makes it a little awkward because you're like, okay, so this group had 2 of the worst teams, and they're one of them safe now. But like in the North American region, you're not going to have that. So maybe it makes a little more sense there. But either way, I think kind of shaving off some games somehow, making it like 60-70% of the current length is probably the ideal like length of season.
Yeah, I hope that they make some changes between next year or this year and next year, because I don't know. I'm just not convinced.
I'm burnt out. I'm Travis. I need more vacations. I have to go to the NA LCS every weekend late and interview someone like I watch the games.
Yeah,
I have dinner plans with Doublelift. You know,
that's true.
I need more Doublelift dates.
Yeah, that's right.
double dates.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Emily, the final conversation on team sucking is the Rift Rivals team records.
So I just wanted to chat. This isn't going to be a super long topic because it's not really involved, but I took a look at the teams that are going into Rift Rivals and their win rates. And so starting with, and this isn't to say that like all of these teams are great, because obviously like even looking at the first region, Korea, we have MVP, who is at 1-3 in series and 2-7 in games. So obviously they're dragging down the average significantly. But they have in games, they have a 58% win rate. Teams from China are doing pretty well, although they have only had 1 week as opposed to 2, so just fewer games at 63%. And then Taiwan, Machi and Flash Wolves are dragging the average down significantly, but it's still 54%. So all teams, like the groups have a positive win rate, right, for that set of Rift Rivals teams. And we have Europe, who's killing it. Their teams are at a 77% win rate. And North America is at 41%.
Yeah, but
Ayo.
hang on. Think about it this way. Europe has to play other Europe teams. Of course they're going to do better. NA has to play NA teams, which are much better. Of course they're going to have a harder time.
Is that your answer to this discussion?
I mean, it's a pretty
Travis
easy answer.
firmly believes P1 will sweep the entire thing. We're not even going to see C9 or TSM.
I mean, wouldn't that be sick? Like that would it would just show how bad Europe is.
I cannot see that happening.
As a fan of LPL, I watch MVP games and I'm burning them into the recesses of my mind so that when they beat a top LPL team, I can actually just like recall every moment where MVP players int or do something really, really ridiculous where they screw up with their lane assignment or they
don't worry, we're going to talk about them later.
And then it will come fresh to my mind. So it's like, yes, Kelsey, the LPL is actually this bad. So,
well, I mean, MVP are kind of a Chinese cheat, like the way they play.
Yeah, they're more LPL than LPL right now. I feel like they're kind of like they're doing pretty well here.
Anyway, so yeah, I guess like how, as people who look at the scene, like how seriously are we going to take Rift Rivals? Is it just all in fun, or is it actually a bit of an issue that North America's top 3 teams that they're sending from last split are at this kind of win percentage? Because I feel like whenever we talk about North America, we always talk about parity and whether it's a good or bad thing. And obviously, you can make the argument, well, it's just that the bottom teams got better and the top teams are
10
really bad.
Teams would beat Europe's 10 teams.
Yeah, so we should expand Rift Rivals to start at the very bottom.
Yeah,
and then go up.
That'd actually be hilarious.
I hate to break it to you, but I think
I'm looking at Fnatic, and I'm just really excited that we get to see so many Fnatic best of 5s, Like, I am super hyped for 3 Fnatic best of 5s in a row. Let's go.
So what I'd say is, like, obviously, Rift Rivals is not a very serious event, just in terms of the format, the time that is placed in the middle of a season where teams are busy with other stuff.
By the way, is it between week 4 and week 5?
It's the first week of July.
Which actually might be between week 3 and 4.
Really?
I forget.
No.
But
it should be,
4 and 5.
For Korea, it's between week 5 and 6.
Okay.
For
Korea's 1 week ahead.
Yeah, for North America, it's no.
It's got to be week 4
It's
and week
still
5 because
between-
next week is week 3.
Week 5 and 6.
Yeah.
Oh,
all
really?
right.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Sorry. Continue.
Anyways, the point is, it's obviously not going to be taken super seriously by teams who are like, I got a really hard prep for this one. And with that in mind, though, it still is concerning just because you want a fun event. Like,
Well, the fans will take it super seriously.
Well, the fans will take it super seriously, but not too, like, it's NAEU best of what one.
Yeah, that rivalry is crazy.
Yeah, there'll be a ton of smack talk. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I don't think
I agree. It's a ludicrous rivalry, Travis. Truly.
there'll be
Bring on the
absurd
China-Europe
rivalry.
There'll be a lot of smack talk, but there's going to be way more. When Worlds rolls around, the amount of people who are referencing Rift Rivals as like why EU is better than NA is going to be pretty minimal compared to like,
Yeah,
well,
of
you
course
guys
they will be minimal because NA will prove that they're better than EU. Listen, the only situation that could happen is if NA actually does lose, it's because Riot, very clearly in keeping with their last 5 years, very European biased, and NA has to go to Berlin and fight them on their home territory, dealing with jet lag and all this stuff. It's the only way I could see NA losing, and that's what I will say.
I mean, ancillary to this, though, like, I guess, what do we think of parity in NA? Because it's something that I feel like we've brought up a lot.
Too much, and that's why I don't want to bring it back up again.
Okay.
But
I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's
same.
a little early this season to say anything about parity because it's two weeks in. I think when you're rolling around to week 6 and like Envy is still pushing everyone to 3 games, then maybe you bring it up, or whoever the bottom place team is. I think that's why I was talking about more last split was just how close everyone's game record was, because even TSM at the top, who had a great match record, had a less than stellar game record. Anyways, the point is, Rift Rivals, yes, it's going to be super fun, but if NA just limps their way in there and gets smashed, it's not going to be fun. And that's the problem, is that it's supposed to be a fun event. And if you just send 3 duds, it's not.
I mean, we all have
It'd
talked
be
about
fun
Rift
for European
rivalries
fans.
recently and talked about how we think it sucks.
I think it could be
like it.
fun. It's just.
I mean, we talked.
I think it's fantastic.
It's in the middle. We talked about this. It's in the middle of the split. The teams aren't going to take it
I'm really looking
seriously.
forward to the China,
the
Korea,
hell?
Taiwan one.
Yeah, but we
I've
all
said this
agree.
on this show.
Yeah, but we all agree no one's going to take it seriously, and the players don't want to do
Well,
it. The
the
teams
reason
wouldn't
we-
do it if they could avoid it. Like, that's not a good event.
The reason we agreed it's not a good event is because everyone wants more international competition, and they give us this, and this is kind of like for fun, and we want serious international competition. So that's why it sucks in that regard, but it could still be a fun event independent of like what you want it to be. Like
Yeah,
if
it's
we
kind
go,
of like the old All Stars rival, like argument. Like how seriously are we supposed to take All Stars? Like not recently, but I mean
Yeah.
before they changed the format. This
Right.
was like there was a similar discussion about All Stars and like how well do we want our teams to do, etc.
and for the most part, I think people enjoyed the event still, and that's my point. Is that this should still be a fun event, even if it's not like, oh man, I just wish we had another international competition. But the problem is if P1 goes there and gets smashed, and then C9 goes there and gets smashed, and TSM like puts up a little bit of a fight and then loses, it's kind of like that wasn't that fun. There's no banter. It's just like, please destroy us, EU.
Yeah. Well, that's our conversation for Rift Rivals. We're going to hit to break, but when we get back, we'll be talking about how to tell if the better team lost. Again, more negativity here on League Weekly.
제가 생각하기에는 좀 까다로운 선수가 있는데 페이커 선수고요.
I really hate Dryce. He's the worst champion ever. My demon is forgiven. Over the years, he's been using like a psychological war against me, and I've never really noticed.
My demon is every jungler who try to cheese at level 3 or level 2.
It is impossible to play support against Azir. He can clear your ward from a mile away, and if you walk at him, you got a base. And as a support,
Maybe I am my demon. Maybe I just need to look in the mirror and realize that I am boosted.
My demon is actually Teemo. Even if I'm gonna win the game, I actually don't want to play the game. As soon as I see Teemo locked in top lane, it's like I'm not gonna have fun no matter what.
저랑 좀 가장 많이 붙었던 선수 중 하나가 이제 뱅인데 이제
I think my demon is when my tier 1 tower is dead in the side lane and I want to push it out so it's not slow pushing to them and it seems safe, so I go for that wave and it's just like that one wave and I always die on that exact same wave to either the enemy mid laner or jungler just ganking me.
My demon is Kobe. Whenever I'm with Kobe and I want to be serious and like really get ready for like a cast or something like a big conversation or whatever, we always end up doing the dumbest stuff ever.
My demon is probably Deficio, because every time we come to these international events, he's always trying to distract me, touch my butt.
I have a lot of moments that are not fit for on-camera things with Kobe.
저는 딱히 만나기 꺼려지는 상대나 뭐 챔피언 그런 거는 딱히 없는 것 같아요.
We are back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the little clip of everybody's demons. And you know what? I have my own demon. His name is Mark Zimmerman. What do you have to say to that, Mark?
I don't really have much to say. I think I'm an angel on your shoulder trying to guide you down the right path. And you just ignore me.
That's not accurate at all. You can tell how engrossed Emily is in this conversation. I look over and she's just looking at the show notes. She's like, I don't care. Okay. Speaking of Mark, we're going to have you talk to us about how to tell if the better team lost. You said this isn't a negative topic.
Oh, it's more of a hypothetical topic using CLG TSM as a case study.
Okay, I'm excited.
So,
two great teams.
Two decent teams at the very least. All right.
Wait, did you just say TSM is like the best team in the league?
What? No.
At the start of the show, you said TSM and another team are.
Yeah, CLG.
Yeah, there you go. The two best teams.
Sure. Oh, God. Whatever, dude. Let me get through my points today, please. Anyways, what I was saying is I was wondering what kind of things you use to tell if the better team lost. Because in this matchup, it was pretty back and forth with CLG losing the series 1-2 to TSM. But I think after watching it and despite the fact that TSM got the better of them here, it's hard to say for me that TSM is the better team because a lot of their other losses over the course of the 2 weeks have been to what should be inferior teams, whereas CLG has been beating everybody else relatively decisively. So the question is, if you want to take the viewpoint that CLG lost but is still the better team, and you can expand this to other examples if you want, what kind of things would you point to be like, yeah, even though they lost, they did this really well, they did that really well. These are the other things for why I think that they would, all things considered, be the better team.
Why are you facing Emily when you ask that question?
Because you're not going to talk.
All right. How about this? You can tell a better team loses whenever they have a dramatic lead throughout the entire game, and then something just goes wrong, unlucky, like a Baron steal or something like that, and then suddenly the game turns around and they lose.
So that team would be the worst team.
Weldon says that you're wrong.
The better team is the team that has the lead for almost the entire game and is outplaying, and then some stupid mistake makes them lose it, which was basically the story of MSI.
Well, it's also the story of Echo Fox C9 from this weekend, where Echo Fox had 2 monster leads and lost. But then you could also make the argument that, if you guys can't consistently close games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it depends on, if you're just looking at a single instance, then you do that. If it's a situation where this is consistently repeating itself, like old school Dignitas, then with Scar throwing the pillow, then that probably means it's different, right? It depends on how Is that a good answer?
That was all right.
Yeah,
I'll take it for you.
Yeah. See.
So in that CLG TSM, what I look at, because I do think that CLG looked like the better team, but what I'm about to say might not be fair to TSM. So you can correct me if you strongly disagree.
Lots of TSM fans.
But I think that one of the big things that I look at when I look at TSM, and I look at this when I look at SKT too, just because, again, I think the two teams are set up very similarly, where TSM, for the most part, can usually rely on Bjergsen to bail them out. And I'm not saying it has to be a flashy play or anything like that, but the manner in which he carries that team is through a lot of small incremental things. And I don't think, maybe it's just because it's the first 2 weeks. Again, they said they'd be taking it easy. They're integrating Doublelift back into the team, so now they have to decide whether they're going to play around top, around Hanser, or they're going to play around bot with Doublelift. And obviously, people are still picking on Svenskeren not looking very good. Well, that's probably one of the reasons is they haven't decided where they're going to play around. But when I looked at TSM, I didn't see them change anything. So even looking at them last split, I still saw them as this team that heavily relied on Bjergsen. Even though I know a lot of Hanser caught a lot of people's attention, and I'm not trying to take away from what he did, but that is how I see TSM. And I didn't see anything that much different, whereas I think CLG, again, has a little bit higher ceiling. They're playing a little bit differently. If they can get Dardoch more integrated into the rest of the team and it's really small mistakes that they made, right? And really pivotal moments. So I think it's a little bit easier for me as an outsider to look at that and say they can fix this and they win this game. Whereas TSM, it's more nebulous in terms of what they have to fix. Sorry, I'm not sure if I did a good job explaining.
I think I know what you're saying, because especially in the third game, there were a lot of small situations where this Ari charm was an inch away, this Justice Punch was an inch away, the charm Afro it was a great dive call that they just slightly messed up, and the teleport finishes on it. These small things that add up over time, and then even at the very end, from behind, and one of the things I think shows who's a better team is how well they play from behind. CLG consistently can find plays from behind, whereas TSM feels like they struggle with that. So it's not just okay, you can get leads, but can you stall out when you start losing? Can you bring it back?
And it's weird because I think CLG's composition had a lot of in that game 3, a lot of upfront burst, right? So you're really relying on everyone following up on Aphromoo pretty much. Like, he's your primary initiator, and then you have burst from Graves, you have burst from Xayah and Ahri. And I think that they did show that, like, when they can pull that off, it's really good. And now it's just about finding that consistency, which I think you can say will come with time and practice.
Kelsey, do you have any thoughts on this?
I just want to say you can tell when the better team lost when they win the first game against a team that has Kennen in the top lane and Caitlyn and Lulu in the bottom lane. Okay. Yeah. So
beating lane dominant champions.
Beating lane. Well, it isn't just lane dominant champions, because the reason that Caitlyn is so good is not only is she lane dominant, but she also like kind of scales like a hyper carry because of her range and things like this. So like Caitlyn is just the god tier 80 carry. Okay, that's just the way it is.
I feel like you're making this about something else.
You just want to talk about Doublelift. No.
No, not me.
I'm not making this about Doublelift. But I'm saying that I actually was pretty surprised that TSM lost that game, because they did have like a really good setup, in my opinion. But that was kind of a joke. But regardless, I think objectively you tell when the better... it's like really hard to say that the better team lost, because I actually really hate that argument. Like, I really hate the argument that you say, oh, this team was like actually better, but they lost on this day. And I have made it myself probably on occasions, so I'm sure someone will look it up and say, but you said this at this point. But like, definitively at this moment later on, I actually don't really like that argument. And I want to say that, like, maybe even if TSM had a better game that day, then they are showing signs of being like the better team overall, and maybe eventually that's something that will come out. And it's like really hard for you to say based on this smaller sample size of games, because I do feel like TSM still did like a few things that were smart, and CLG still fell to some of the same problems like grouping mid and things like this that I think are issues that they have. So, I mean, I don't know. For me, it's like really hard to say that CLG was the better team, even though they lost.
Just more abstractly on the topic, I actually like that kind of question, just because, especially for games still going on like in the middle of a season, as opposed to like, oh, well, they won the ending tournament. They won. There you go. I think that's where like a lot of cool stories about upsets happen. Like, yeah, the better team actually lost because the worst team had like a better game plan, or they executed better on that day. It's like, that's why you play the game. That's where the phrase "any given Sunday" comes from football. Where like, yeah, anyone can actually win if you play bad. Like, TL beat Dignitas. I would never say TL is the better team over Dignitas, but if you go for some stupid invades and you take bad trades and you play bad, or if the other team comes out and plays well, you can win. And like, to their credit, TSM was giving away a ton of free Barons in their other series, and they didn't really do that this time around. So, like, yeah, they played a little bit better than they had shown. And maybe they actually improved to be better than CLG, or, you know, in this hypothetical one. So I personally like the argument just because it's fun to have, though I understand in terms of, like, value, it's like, well, who cares? The other team won.
Very good. Well, let's move on to Emily's... I guess you have a statement here. It's not so much a question.
No,
go for
not
it.
Really. So, what I wanted to talk about was like evaluating a team preseason, and I'm going to use Longzhu Gaming for this example, because this is a team that they had like a bunch of stuff come out before the season started that was really bad about the team organization and players not getting paid and contracts being presented late or not signed on time and all this other stuff, and it affected their gameplay. And every split since they came together, Longzhu is expected to be this like really great, like they were the first Korean quote-unquote super team, and now you can look back and retroactively argue that they weren't, but at that time that's how they were billed. And coming into this split, a lot of people were looking at this new jungler they had and saying, okay, this is the guy that's going to make Longzhu amazing. He's like at the top of solo queue. All their players are at the top of solo queue. And he's kind of really struggled. Like he's at times he's looked like the worst player on the team, even in their games that they've won. So I guess how, like, when you're evaluating a team on paper, how much stock do people put in? Because I feel like that's kind of an unfair position to put him in, attributing all of this potential just from solo queue when he hadn't even had a chance to play with the team. And I think looking at this team, if you look at what's working for them, because it's not like they're doing poorly, it's a lot of communication between their mid laner, BDD, who is someone who sat on the bench for all of last split and finally came in and now is playing really well. And then they obviously have Prey and Gorilla, which is one of the best bot lanes in the region and in the world, in my opinion. So I guess are there teams in other regions where you guys have seen this happen, where this like really hyped rookie doesn't do well, and then all of a sudden people are like, well, like maybe he's actually just not that good, and the rest of the team is carrying him? Because I feel a little bit bad for Cuz, because I feel like people attributed a lot of this potential to him, and now that he's not living up to that potential after 2 weeks, a lot of people have been like very negative on him now.
Isn't this the opposite, like the flip side of your argument? Which still, it still goes along with it, but I just mean looking at it from the other end of the spectrum, you have said to me about 27 times, I hate that everyone's pointing at Golden Glue as the reason Team Liquid's losing, and Team Liquid always blames Golden Glue,
No,
etc.
it's a similar thing. Like
Right?
I want to challenge people to look beyond like one player who's playing poorly or badly and blaming them.
Counter argument, what about Pyrion with Envy? Because, I mean, yes, they brought in Violet as the coach, which maybe it's helping. It's always hard to tell how important a coaching
former
staff is.
StarCraft 2 pro.
Former StarCraft 2 pro, first time coaching league team. Yeah. I'm sure he's played the game plenty. The question is, when you look at this team, it seems like they had all these things that worked well for them last split, and you just kind of needed to shore up the weaknesses a little bit where, like, their mid and top were kind of erratic, and now you have a staple in the mid lane. And that's all you really needed. And that is, for the most part, what has really changed the team is the mid lane change. So like there's counter examples too, right? Where like one guy came in.
I mean, it's weird in that case because I don't feel like Pyrion, like I myself was, I guess, neutral, slightly down on him going in just because of what I'd seen from him in the past.
History, yeah.
But I think it's like slightly different because I don't feel like I feel like people looked at that team, and no offense to Ninja, but I feel like they looked at that team and they were like, if we can find a mid laner but Ninja, and I guess that's what you're saying is like the whole like he was the main issue on the team.
Yeah, because it extends through draft. It comes through like his ability to play in the mid late game and all these different things. Communication, who knows? So I think it does kind of go by a case basis where like if Longzhu has these like massive structural problems inside their organization, they clean those up. That's probably way more influential than this one guy. Whereas on the flip side, Envy didn't have those kind of stories behind them.
I would say in LPL, there are actually a lot of cases where a single player makes or breaks a team. Usually because there's like a lawless sense of and lack of infrastructure. So the players have to be like self-motivated. So you usually need one guy to be like, okay, we're practicing today. We're doing this, and this. God. And then like to sort of strong, like it's true. If you look at the best Chinese teams in history, there's usually like a guy who does this and who like controls the team, and he's one of the players, and he's usually the best player on the team. It's like really weird. So it's strange because for a Chinese team to be good, their best player has to be a leader. It's like makes it extremely pinpointed for some reason. But so I do think there are a lot of.
Yeah, I was gonna say Bjergsen's even a little bit of an example with that, where like you have like this one guy who's so driven, everyone else feels like they kind of have to like play up to that level, and the whole the environment of the team mirrors that.
And that was always like the argument for why Clearlove was supposed to be super valuable, even though he wasn't necessarily good on WE, and the guy on WE was Wei Xiao. He became the guy on EDG because he had the same kind of mentality and mindset as Wei Xiao, and then like he became this good player. So like usually there will be a player like that on really strong Chinese teams. So yeah, I do think that there are a lot of cases where a single player like makes or breaks a team. But in terms of, let's see, I think in this case, like it's very rare for that player to be a rookie, if that makes sense. In terms of like making a teamwork, or in terms of like if you put a lot of hope and a lot of pressure on the rookie, it's actually very rare for them to rise to the occasion. Like, I guess Faker is one of the great exception. Maybe there are others.
Dardoch. And as much as that was half a joke when I said that, he was super important for the fact that TL almost made the final spring split. And then he was also a pretty big factor in why they didn't the next split. I mean,
he made it and braked it.
There we go. Dardoch is the true Faker of NA. We got it.
I mean, you could. I mean, Stixay didn't make or break a team when he came in as a rookie. It was more like he filled a hole better than people.
Gradually got better.
Yeah, he filled a hole better than anyone thought he would.
I think in this case, I also am just really sick of people watching like a really small sample size of games, or like not watching any games at all and being like, this guy is high on the solo queue ladder, so he's going to be great. Or like watching TL and being like, Golden Glue is definitely the problem. Stuff like that really bothers me.
Do you know who's really high on the Korean solo queue ladder? My boy
Yes,
Keith.
I do, but you can say it.
The legend, you know?
Rick Fox!
Number 7 on the Korean solo queue ladder, his claim to fame. It's pretty excellent. So, I do think the Korean solo queue ladder in some regard is overvalued. But if you look at a team like Longju and everyone is up there, I think it is like significant. So.
I think you can also say like the whole does one player make or break a team? If you look at a team like TL right now, like one player could help that team a lot. If they got like a legitimate leader, like let's say somehow High for Golden Glue, like hypothetically that team has enough talent on the roster.
There's another example.
Yeah, High.
Yeah, High actually, I can't believe we didn't think of that example before, but every team he goes on, whether they're inconsistent or not, at the very least does look good or decent.
We'll see his final challenge. This
FlyQuest roster. Yeah.
No, the final challenge will actually be the Team Liquid roster.
Oh my god!
High for Golden Glue.
High's like, I need a challenge.
Can you get this team to playoffs?
That'd actually be really fun.
I'm gonna go Smurf now.
Yeah. All right. What does a skill ceiling look like? Emily asked.
So I'm going to be using another Korean example for this. And Kelsey touched upon it briefly when she was talking about MVP, which is the team I'm about to talk about. So I don't know if she wants to take this first, but Team MVP, they are known for their slow starts. So I'm not saying it's like super panic mode yet. But I do think because we've now seen this team for multiple splits. He's just laughing at the
display.
I really wanted it for the Bartle. Anyway. She's laughing
I knew
at the
it was
clip.
coming. Anyway, go ahead.
Anyway, yeah. So they're off to a rough start. They haven't changed anything about their playstyle. They like famously did not change their roster when a lot of people were saying maybe they should because they have deficiencies, specifically with Maha. Was the one that kind of everyone pointed out, like maybe you could get someone better. And Max is sometimes visibly carrying him out of the laning phase. And his team fighting was very, very shaky. But so for this team, it's a team that people thought were really impressive as they improved because they improved as a team. And it was their strategy and their like communication in outwitting other teams, along with a few like weird champion picks for both Ed in the top lane and then Max as their support. And I am just wondering, like, if you guys think there is a skill ceiling with a group of players that some of them have like very visible weaknesses, but they've always come together and communicated better than those weaknesses. And they've gradually improved in the 2 splits we've seen them. Is there a way to tell if and when a team like that hits a specific skill ceiling or not? Because a lot of times, like, and I feel like this doesn't happen as much in Korea as it does in North America and Europe. But a lot of teams will stick with the same roster to watch them develop. Like another interesting example right now going on in Korea, and obviously, again, it's really early and they play KT tonight, which I'm not super high on KT anyway, but is Jin Green Wings, who kept their same roster from the promotion tournament, looked awful, and have actually looked like a cohesive, smarter team this split. So I guess, is there such a thing as a skill ceiling for that team? And then, I mean, I believe there is, but what does that look like when you see it?
I think for new teams that especially get together in spring split, it's like very rare to find that team peaking in spring split. Like I think it takes, assuming that the roster's like somewhat working out, it's going to take more than 3 months to find their skill ceiling. And that's, there's no internal issues that crop up and derail your improvement and these kinds of issues. There's counterexamples, of course, like Immortals in North America, who kind of just came out and were nasty out of nowhere, and they stayed nasty the whole time, but they never actually improved because they kind of just, who knows
sat
why.
at the top.
Yeah, they sat at the top. Maybe they never felt pressured to really improve. Stories came out about their work ethic at some point, but the teams that I were on in Team Liquid and even Curse, like our spring splits were never as good as our summer splits. I know Splice is an example in Europe, just this last time, that were almost in relegations and bounced back all the way to going to Worlds. I think there's a lot of examples where teams do improve up until some amount of time. And I think after a year, if your team doesn't look good, like if you put a team together in spring, don't change it too much in summer, and then you don't make Worlds or look super impressive in summer, I don't think there's a reason to keep that team anymore, because you will not improve in the off season generally, unless like your team hard commits to grinding solo queue in the preseason and stuff. There's you're not going to find scrims. You're going to take that time off with everybody else, and you will start back closer to ground zero, just like everyone else will.
So MVP, I will just say MVP in Korea, they played their first LCK split, so not Challenger split, but LCK split, when they qualified for the 2016 summer season. So this will be their year anniversary.
Right. So in that regard,
that kind of runs concurrently to what you're saying. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, if you're starting in spring and you have your entire spring and summer split and you don't look great by the end of that, probably hit at some kind of skill ceiling. If you started in summer and then like you have this awkward gap in the middle, I would say give them a year again, starting in spring, to see how they look, midway through summer.
I have a couple. I would have agreed with you until this year, probably. And the reason why is because there are actually 2 Chinese teams that I feel like should, because like Chinese teams famously never change their rosters, whatever. That started out really, really bad last year and have just like gotten really good this year relative to the region and a bunch of it. And that's like, I mean, you couldn't say that WE started off bad, but they have been improving steadily, right? And now they're actually looking even better at the start of this split than they did last split and things like this. And then you have OMG, who were in relegation both splits, 2016 spring, 2016 summer, and then going into this split, they're at the top of Group A after the first week, and they made top 4 last split, just really suddenly. And
that was no roster changes, right?
No roster changes, really, except for... Yeah, no roster changes, except for World 6, and Dredge did a jungle rotation. But, like, Dredge still played games. So they had, like, suddenly this team is doing, like, extremely well. And I think that, like, for me, that's really weird. But it also says something about, like, if you have a lot of rookies and if you are willing to give time, there is, like, once the team starts performing well and the bunch of players start performing well and they start kind of getting it, if you will, then I think they can unlock skill ceilings, because if you understand more about the game and you're able to all like improve together, then there's a reason why like everyone thinks SKT has the best player in every position, is because like people do improve concurrently when they're doing well and when other people are doing well. So I think if you can find that kind of missing point, you can be impressed by some of these players who you thought only played 1 or 2 champions, or some of these champions that looked like they were really, really holding the team back, like Xiyoung. I never thought Xiyoung would be a good top laner in my entire life. Like, and he's actually doing really, really well. So I think that these types of situations are rare but possible. And so if MVP are like kind of taking this gamble and really, really trying to force it, then they might get something out of it. But it's mostly, I would agree that it's kind of worth it to change your roster, especially since it's super hard, like fundamentally, if you're in a situation like that, for the mentality not to be bad, right?
Yeah.
Like if the mentality starts going bad, then I think you have to get Dardoch.
Obviously, the NA faker, as we've established. That's actually why
I just like the CLG parallel.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to bring up MVP, but then I also wanted to bring up Jin Air as well, because I think they're a really interesting example where I thought they were bad, like really, they looked so bad that I was not sure if they'd even make it into this current season. And with the same roster, they look a lot better this split. So
the question is, can we look at Delta Fox as an example of a skill floor? Like, is that just as bad as a team could get?
You know, I don't want to let anything out. I know nothing out of the bag, but you may not have seen the worst yet.
Oh, okay. I'm excited. I'm excited.
Big words from their
punch
analyst.
through the floor.
Found the basement, actually. That's what
you talk about, like, when you get improvements, it's usually not like a constant thing. It's like these breakthroughs and plateaus.
Yeah.
Like, we'll find another staircase down.
Nice.
So you guys are going to find the skill basement, not the skill ceiling.
We might go straight to the core.
Okay.
I believe that, you know, the mentality of the team and the environment of the team is going to dictate like this illusion or this idea of a skill ceiling. So it's probably also true of the skill floor, you know. If you guys really believe you can set new boundaries, I'm all on board.
The sky, the floor is the limit. This
should be I hereby authorize Riot Games in their promotional material for Challenger to use this moment right now for Mark. You might not have seen the worst yet. That's
well. I mean, you first, if it's going to be using the Riot thing, you have to say it with a big, like a serious, like, we're going to get even worse.
All right, moving on. Kelsey, what happened with this Flash Wolf suspension thing? I missed it. I saw like the Karsa thing or whatever. I'm very confused. Karsa's already seemed like a nice boy.
Okay, so the Flash Wolves right now are a mess, all right? They're, like, even in the first week, they're not playing well. And then there was an issue with some sort of Facebook thing. It's very confusing to me, like, why they got suspended for false Facebook authorization
What
or
do
something.
we know? What happened? Like, can anybody explain this to me?
But Betty and MMD were suspended for week 2, okay? So the top laner, Betty and MMD.
By the team. And it was very, like...
Then they played...
Oh, no,
by the
they
Flash
never gave a
organization itself.
Okay.
Well, they said something about Facebook authorization or something. But the second, when they played Raisin Gaming, in this week, Karsa left game 2 that they were losing early. And so now he's been suspended, quote unquote, indefinitely for poor sportsmanship.
By Riot.
By the Flash Wolves team.
Oh.
Not by Riot. Flash Wolves are doing all these suspensions themselves. And they're going to play Refrain, who I actually kind of think is an underrated jungler in the region. I've actually talked to Clement Chu about him, and Clement Chu thinks he's awful. So take that with what you will. But I think he's like an extremely efficient jungler. He's like really good at counter jungling and identifying where the enemy jungler is, so he can go there and steal his camps. But he doesn't necessarily have the biggest impact on lanes, and he relies a lot on his laners to push like kind of on their own. So the question is like, does it just like completely kill the LMS that Karsa is suspended indefinitely? Like that's like internationally in terms of international
does this not mean for sure that he'll join another team next year? Like,
this paves the way for Wins to make his
I just mean
glorious comeback.
Like this split in particular, like looking at Rift Rivals, which is the closest international competition, which I think it will definitely impact if, regardless of whether he comes back in time for that or the end of this, or Worlds at the end of the season. Like, do we think that this is... Because I actually don't think that the team that is at the top right now, the Raisin Gaming team, is that good. Like, I watched a lot of their VODs going into this, and I was just like, yeah, okay. So they're the undefeated team in the LMS right now, and they've beaten Machi, they've beaten HKA, who are, like, theoretically top 5 teams from last split, and then they've beaten the Flash Wolves rosters with missing their players. So the question is, like, it's an interesting question to me to ask how much like Karsa's theoretical indefinite suspension can hurt like an entire region's international chances this coming,
I mean,
like just for the split.
People always told me Flash Wolves was like the only competitive team in that region.
Yeah,
they were last split, but I mean,
so if they're gone,
H2, I feel like kind of almost always catch up at the end of summer.
Okay.
So you have sort of HQ hanging out.
I mean, this is not saying you're
terrible, but Refrain is on loan from J Team. Refrain was like the sub jungler for J Team.
To me, Kelsey, it sounds like you're making the argument that they're like that this region's going to suck.
I'm not really looking at it right now and thinking that they're going to do well at international events. So
I mean, the biggest thing is that there are two problems. One is that the LMS has had a serious lack of parity in the past, where like there's two teams. Like it was even a joke among a few people I know that follow the LMS when they received a third seed. They joked, why? Because we only have two good teams. And like it was probably 50-50 serious to joking, just because traditionally the region has been so top heavy. And the Flash Wolves, not only is their jungler, one of their best players, not going to play, but they're loaning a jungler from another one of the like supposed top teams. So it actually has like, it's weird, but it can have a huge impact on the region.
I think stepping back and just looking at it organizationally, I don't think, like you said, since indefinite suspension, right? It's up to them when to lift it. This could be like the perfect tournament in Rift Rivals to be like, haha, we're teaching you a lesson. You can't compete internationally. And when in reality, no one cares. And then after that one tournament that he's forced to miss, they let him back in. And it's like, there, I hope, slap on the wrist, learn your lesson for this tournament that didn't matter. And please, God, come back for Worlds.
Yeah. But the thing is that even before the suspensions of Betty and MMD, like there were issues with the Flash Wolves. Like they haven't won their games. The split, like the basically nearly undefeated team that only dropped like a couple games all split last split to HQ hasn't been winning. So I think that's an issue in and of itself, even just without the Karsa suspension. So, like, is the Karsa suspension a symptom of something that's going on with Flash Wolves? Like, are they finally... Because they're another example of a team that just doesn't really change their roster that much, right? Like, they had the Betty situation, and I would argue that even made them worse. And so, like, they can't figure out how to play without NL to some extent. So the question is, like... I mean, how reliant are the LMS on the Flash Wolves to do well to really show up here is my question.
I mean, I think
they're
very
heavily reliant.
Yeah, historically at least.
Yeah.
Seems like that region's gonna suck. I don't know if we need to say anything else.
We get a Rift Rivals.
I'm keeping tabs on this new team. Their Toys' team. They just recently qualified. Toys is the manager. So. Like, I'm going to keep an eye on them because people were saying that, they're super reliant on Gragas and Orianna and things like this, but then they played Elise and Talia because people used the bans for the Gragas and the Orianna. So there's some signs for them, but to me it's like they can get the super good group mid strategy and like I think they have echoes of Flash Wolves where their jungler and their mid laner are like pretty explosive, and so they'll just like give up pressure in side lanes, and since LMS side lanes aren't that good anyway, like they can just get mid super far ahead that way. So they have echoes of Flash Wolves, but I want to see like more dimensions from these two players to see if they're like theoretically the next Karsa and Maple, because like some of these guys came out of nowhere. Like their mid laner used to be a sub on like an IESF team, if anyone even knows what that tournament is except me. But yeah, it's an interesting
Sports Federation.
International Esports, yeah. But they do the really, really small tournament every year where they have like actually 5 people from every country go and compete, and they send 5 people from each country, and it's always like dominated by Korea and China because no one else can get together the 5 people. So They even send some African teams. It's an interesting thing. But yeah, so they like that's how obscure kind of it felt. He was on some other teams before that, but it's, to me, this could be interesting because the question is always like, where does the LMS get their talent? Like, their server size is even smaller than NA's, right? So it'll be interesting to see if this is like a new wave of talent or if Raisin is just like...
Sounds like you're doing a lot to try to raise the hopes of LMS fans out there.
I mean, I don't want them to be a dud is the question. So like my question is like, what do they do to overcome the fact that Flash Wolves are flopping?
Nothing. It's over.
I mean,
it's over.
So
NA is now the 4th best region. You guys made it.
We were always the 2nd best behind Korea and chomping at the bit, I think, a little bit. I mean, last year's MSI
you have
showed
Korea very scared.
Yeah. They should be. All right. Earlier in the show, you made a reference to Doran Shield, I believe, regarding P1. And now you're going to talk about it again, Kelsey. Talk to me about Doran Shield.
All right. So to me, the Doran Shield is really interesting because we're seeing a lot of champions come up that normally we wouldn't be able to play because Doran Shield gives them a really safe laning phase. This clip is just like really generic bot lane trading. It has no actual relevance. But the point is that when you do bot lane trades, like Doran Shield has a lot of ability to heal based on like damage taken and things like this. And then when you're doing extra damage to minions, so you get a lot of extra ability to just lane from champions that wouldn't be good at laning anyway. And so we're seeing like the rise of hyper carry bottom lanes. Kassadin is actually insanely busted in Doran Shield meta and things like this. So I guess my question is that like if we're seeing, is this a rare case? Because usually when something is really, really broken, it limits the choices that you can make, right? And that's what makes something overpowered, is it like limits the amount of, there's no real counterplay or anything like this. And to an extent, because so many people are picking Doran Shield, you can look at it like a limiting factor, but it's also like allowing a lot of options to come up that didn't exist because it's kind of limiting the effectiveness of poke lanes and things like this. So you can play like super hard engage stuff. Like Karma is no longer the best support ever in God's gift to humanity like she's been for the past year or whatever. And then you have like scaling picks. You have a lot of dive comps. You have all sorts of things like this. So do we feel like Doran Shield being the way it is just like definitively a bad thing that has to be fixed, or can it also be a good thing?
I mean, I think it can also be a good thing for the reasons you described. I see it as a really interesting, and it's not a one-to-one substitute, because like I will say one of the things that really concerned me when Riot decided to remove lane swaps was not necessarily champion diversity, but the fact that you couldn't pick specific champions because they were just so bad in a 1v1 or 2v2 that you wouldn't be able to survive long enough, right? And so I think it, to some degree, not a huge degree, but to some degree, I see the new Doran Shield as filling a bit of that vacuum. I will also admit that I really love, and maybe it's just because a lot of my favorite support players are really good on engaged champions, but I really like seeing more engaged supports. Like I even like the Thresh, the Blitz that we've seen a lot of the time back in the bot lane, as opposed to the Lulu, Karma, Zyra that was kind of has dominated the meta for a really long time. So I do think this is one of the rare cases where something that is overpowered can have a really interesting effect on the meta overall. I know Mark disagrees a bit because we talked about this earlier.
Which you weren't supposed to.
Oh no! The show's ruined for everyone. Pack it up.
Now it's just as scripted as the LCS.
I mean, well, so what I was saying was I talked to a couple coaches in North America, at least, about how it's coming back and it's influencing the support pool largely, and that's probably where you see some of the biggest changes in terms of the meta from it. And in that regard, like, it does feel like it's important to it, but they think that this playmaking support meta is like while slightly a symptom of it, would exist if the Doran Shield nerfs came through and people kind of went back to D-Blade pot start. And
why is that?
They just don't think it's that critical with some of the nerfs that came into Lulu recently, and then Karma. They think that you can deal with it just with some of the other new playmaking supports.
I think Karma is still super good. Like I think Thresh is still a good counter. Right, I think Thresh is a counter to Karma, and I think the reason why Thresh has risen in popularity so much though is like really impacted by Doran Shield, because you can like Karma's ability to poke. Like the thing that I like about Doran Shield is that it isn't just the support, it's like limiting the effectiveness of poke comps overall, and like having these poke be really successful in lane, like things like Jace and things like this, like, and then also suddenly Caston has good matchups into champions that typically poke and things like this. So I think that that's really interesting. So you've got like your dynamic of, you know, siege, poke, engage, or whatever, and then suddenly that's one is less effective. And so that's my downside to Doran Shield, but I'm kind of tired of poke anyway, so it's kind of nice.
I think it's something that for the meta most people agree is like, great, thank you, change up these lane matchups a little bit. And like conceptually it's a cool item to have where like you get counterpicked, but you take this to survive the lane as best you can, and then hopefully you become relevant later in the game. But the issue that kind of comes
I guess for me, I just to underline the point before you go on, because it sounds like you're going to change the subject a bit, I don't think the biggest impact is the support meta. I think the biggest impact is actually like some of the scaling AD carries, the fact that you're like seeing all-in versus Fiora matchups in the top all the time and things like this. So I think those are a little bit more significant than the support changes, but
right, I wasn't.
The support changes are nice as well.
I was including the entire meta in that. I was saying that you can take this in a lot of different lanes to survive early matchups or make them favored more your way. Yeah. Conceptually, we all agree that's cool. Mm-hmm. The problem comes is that none of us play the game that much compared to the pro players, and it actually feels awful to play against this item for a lot of people.
Yeah, it does.
Where you win a trade and it doesn't matter, or you like do something correctly and the D-Shield sustain is a little much, and it just lessens some of the advantages that a player would normally be used to getting in the past year and a half of competition. And in that regard, it does, I understand, it's not enjoyable to play against, and even for the casual player base, they might feel the same way. And as analysts, we're like, cool, look at this pick, look at this thing. And other people are like, I hate this. And I think that's a perspective that we, on the outside as viewers, can easily lose on the game, is how things feel, not just their impact overall.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe good for viewers, bad for everyone else.
Not necessarily even bad, because like the supports players love it. Like they're like, thank God I'm not on Karma and Lulu poking out their AD carry with minimal sustain. Now the AD is sustained, they don't trade as hard, blah, 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 that whole bot lane thing. So I know support players like it. I know some top players like it, though Kennen and Jace are still meta enough, though there's the concern, like if you take out D-Shield as starting item, are we destroyed by Kennen and Jace? Those are some things that I've heard out of like other roles as well.
Yeah.
And then I think some ADs, even though they didn't like it initially, kind of like it now, just because they can play they can be like super gross late game champions and kill things and everything like that. So some of them like it once you get out of laning phase and stuff like this. So there are definitely multiple sides to like how uncomfortable it is to play. But yeah, it is really annoying. Like the aspect that I dislike about it is, yeah, you're taking one side of the meta that has ultimately dominated for a while, and then you're also like lessening the skill factor of laning phase to an extent. Mm-hmm. You're making laning phase less about skill. Though, I mean, I still think there's a lot of skill inherent to matchups like when you can all in and things like this, and I think we will see more all in type picks to counter some of these scaling answers that people are making, and I think that will be an interesting response too that might be a little bit different, because I think you can just like pick all in level 2 champions and that can be fun as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, when we get back from the break, we're going to have questions from the chat, so hopefully the chat can start getting those questions in there. We'll have Emily Rand's anime pick of the week and more.
제가 생각하기에는 좀 까다로운 선수가 있는데 페이커 선수고요.
I really hate Dryce. He's the worst champion ever. My demon is forgiven. Over the years, he's been using like a psychological war against me, and I've never really noticed.
My demon is every jungler who try to cheese at level 3 or level 2.
It is impossible to play support against Azir. He can clear your ward from a mile away, and if you walk at him, you got a base. And as a support,
maybe I am my demon. Maybe I just need to look in the mirror and realize that I am boosted.
My demon is actually Teemo. Even if I'm gonna win the game, I actually don't want to play the game. As soon as I see Teemo locked in top lane, it's like I'm not gonna have fun no matter what.
저랑 좀 가장 많이 붙었던 선수 중 하나가 이제 뱅인데 이제
I think my demon is when my tier 1 tower is dead in the side lane and I want to push it out so it's not slow pushing to them. And it seems safe. So I go for that wave, and it's just like that one wave, and I always die on that exact same wave to either the enemy mid laner or jungler just ganking me.
My demon is Kobe. Whenever I'm with Kobe and I want to be serious and like really get ready for like a cast or something like a big conversation or whatever, we always end up doing the dumbest stuff ever.
My demon is probably Deficio, because every time we come to these international events, he's always trying to distract me, touch my butt.
I have a lot of moments that are not fit for on-camera things with Kobe.
저는 딱히 만나기 꺼려지는 상대나 뭐 챔피언 그런 거는 딱히 없는 것 같아요.
Who's my greatest demon? I would say my greatest demon is probably Travis Gafford, and I think there's like many reasons why I would consider him my demon. You know, we're in the same field, we report on news, we do interviews, but like first off, like just the fact that he's able to grow a beard, like, and that's something I can't do. And like, that's always haunted me, the fact that like whenever I grow my beard or try to, it's just stubbles, but he has this like full thick beard and he looks so manly, like, and sexy when he has that beard, and I just have this little, like prickly little thing.
For those that don't know, that's Daniel Lee. He does our Smash coverage. I didn't know that the producers were going to sneak that in. That's very... I'll have to talk to them after this.
I'm sure you do. You didn't at all encourage him to talk and say that you're sexy. Right? You were like, hey, Taff,
I didn't know that we're doing this. Well, whatever. Let's move on. Listen, show's probably going to end a little bit early today, which is nice because maybe we can all get off to our E3 parties, right, guys? Kelsey, are you ready for your E3 party? Nope, she's muted.
She doesn't have a voice.
Okay, so let's talk about
6:30 a.m. E3 party. Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Skype you in. Hey.
Darkoplex. We're starting off with questions here. Darkoplex in the Twitch chat says, "Can we see Pantheon in LCS since he's a counter to Fiora in lane?"
I think you're very unlikely to see that in the LCS. Maybe in some of the Challenger Series stuff.
Is that a hint?
No, I just mean like look at what Quas plays. Like
Delta Fox is going to be playing Pantheon.
I was like, did you see Mordekaiser in the NACS by Quas? He always has weird counter picks. And I think just generally in the Challenger Series, you see a bunch of crazy stuff. So until it gets proven somewhere else, I doubt NA will be the first to adopt it.
Do you know who would play it? Pawn. Pawn would play
it.
In top?
Oh,
or you mean if they flex it mid?
Oh no, it's so true.
Just in general, Pawn would
PT
play
or
it.
Doomed.
He used to play, actually, Pantheon in a lot of random situations on EDG. But there were, like, I think the answer to Fiora, if they're going to do, like, a lane answer to Fiora, would just still be the Renekton for the most part.
So Pantheon can work in the regard that, like, Renekton, you still kind of need to gank the Fiora to really dominate it. Though, like if you can like manipulate the wave and start getting leads and stuff. But a well-played Fiora deals with that. Pantheon can actually kind of like murder it, especially with ganks, like super super hard. And then you do have a global where like if you're snowballing, you can start influencing other lanes. Like a well-played Pantheon can work in some areas.
But the problem is that it falls off even.
It is absolutely useless from behind as well. Yeah. Whereas like Renekton can still kind of frontline and jump in there and become a beefcake. Like Pantheon needs to build damage to do anything, and then if you fall behind your ability to assassinate someone, you're just you're garbage.
And I do think it is actually easy if they just push out the lane to kind of dive and punish the Fiora anyway with a strong jungler. So I don't think that that's necessarily that big of an issue. So.
Pacmania234 asks, with the Kindred rework, is it going to be back in the LCS?
I've heard horrible things about the Kindred rework, like worse than the Rek'Sai, which I've heard horrible things about. It sounds like
Rek'Sai is weird because I think she'll be okay.
She has some plays.
Yeah, like I think Rek'Sai will actually be okay, but I think people are going to need to relearn how to play her, if that makes sense. Because like what she did before, especially with obviously the ult initiation as demonstrated when we've seen
walk out of it
played. Yes. Obviously that's not going to work anymore, but I do think she's a bit stronger as a duelist. I think there's basically a different way to play her. For Kindred,
yeah, I mean, like, so the Kindred thing that a lot of people are like confused about is that her E now has an execute on it, which you start out with your E in any situation, and then like its cooldown's not super short, so whenever you're fighting someone,
because you want the slow for the E, right?
Yeah. So you E at the like you Q in range, drop W, E them, and then auto Q, and you kind of like do that basic combination that everyone's used to seeing. But now your E is execute damage at the start, and it's really kind of backwards synergy there. And then they changed the scaling, so she's not supposed to be as reliant on marks, but you kind of still need to get them.
Yeah, she still loses a lot of the early matchups in the jungle too.
Yeah. It's still like it fell out of meta for a reason, and these changes like shifted the power around, but didn't like significantly increase it, which is her issue.
Next up, the Julunks. I don't know how to pronounce it. Is it too early for any fans to worry about getting smashed at Rift Rivals? Yes, way too early.
I think we kind of already answered.
It's only been covered on like 3 different shows. You know, I saw it on some Riot shows. Them talking about NA versus EU Rift Rivals. You know.
Oh, were they?
Yeah.
Is it too early?
Yes, far too early.
Okay.
It's a whole 3 weeks away.
If you want to be worried about it,
going to be.
I would start worrying.
Nah, I actually think that their place Fnatic is looking really like the meta really favors Fnatic, I think, because of like the all-in reasons that I sort of mentioned earlier. And I think that in general they're looking really strong for the 3rd seed team going from EU going into Rift Rivals. So yeah, for me, like I don't expect P1 to get it together. Maybe C9, but P1 is like the big thing for me. So if you're just looking 3, 2, 1, and then TSM might get it together, but I still feel like G2 will be stronger. And then it's weird to me. Like I think maybe UL C9. I've talked about this matchup before as well. I don't know. To me, it looks kind of shaky for NA, but I'm going to say that anyway because everyone says I hate NA, so it's fine.
Moving through the questions. All right, we'll ask this one as I send it over to my dudes in the producer room. Mola 500 says, "What champ is most overrated this patch and most underrated?"
Most overrated on this patch. Is anything super highly like rated? Because like the super highly rated ones are like Galio, which I think is dumb as hell.
So then he would be overrated.
No, he's appropriately rated super high.
He's actually
Bjergsen's really good on him, right? That's what
I think Zach has, for the most part, been paid enough respect because I do think Zach is very strong.
Even in the game,
so I wouldn't say like he's overrated at all. Like even his losses, I think he's proven that he's like a remarkably strong champion right now.
I'm trying to think of something. Caitlyn's definitely not overrated.
No.
I mean, people don't rate Karma Lulu that highly. They still take it. Maybe Blitzcrank. Maybe Afro's overrating Blitzcrank as like one random example.
I think Blitzcrank is
or Sejuani support. I found it.
It's been played a lot, actually.
Blitzcrank has been played a lot.
It's in Korea, yeah.
For what it does. It's in every region. There's been a Blitzcrank, so at least one. So maybe Blitzcrank a little bit overrated. I understand why they're doing it because, like I said, you can just kind of sit under turret and then out of laning phase it can be really useful. But I think it's still like kind of mana dependent and things like this. So I don't know.
Taylor,
you can't just like infinitely hook stuff. Underrated though.
Yeah,
underrated
Taylor Cox
champions?
says in chat, Yahoo Writer says Leona is underrated.
No.
They made that change a while back to like remove some of her burst and put it in like more sustained damage during that whole kind of like assassin. There's like around the era of the assassin rework where for some reason they're really high on the idea of like limiting burst and making it take longer.
Leona gets played gets picked in professional play. It gets picked by RNG. Just watch LPL. I think that's appropriately rating Leona. If you think it hasn't been played at all, then you are mistaken, and that's probably why you think it is underrated. So the
Would you say RNG is overrating Leona?
Maybe, I don't know. I think it works fine for them. I think it's actually kind of good on this patch because you can like all in with it, but there are better picks for that. Like I would rather have other melee options like Braum or Thresh or even Blitzcrank to an extent. So I don't know.
Okay, so who's underrated?
So who's underrated? I think
maybe-
it actually depends on the region a lot because I think we're seeing different picks being played a lot in different regions.
Well,
I
let's
think
just pick NA LCS then.
LCS teams underrate Callista, for example.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
They underrate. I would say they underrate Kassadin as well. So
I was gonna say even Twitch to some extent because I can't remember too.
I don't think
many
it's that they
ADs
underrate.
playing
I just don't think there's many good Twitch players in North America because you have
That
to
could be
be
fair.
able to like go make your own plays a little bit and like find angles and like who is
And you have to communicate well with your team.
yeah and like
I know someone.
And then I'd say maybe Malzahar a little bit just because I've heard from solo queue people that he's dumb. He's really, really dumb. But I haven't seen it. We only saw it once in competitive and it won, or at least in North America. I haven't seen the other regions, but it was played in North America. It won, but it didn't look super great. It was just kind of there.
All right. The last question is from Liquitas C or Liquita SC. I'm not sure. Thoughts on Bethesda's E3 conference? So I watched some of Bethesda's E3 conference last night.
Break it down for us, Travis. This is your topic. Brought to you
And
by
there's a lot of hype around the fact that they might announce like a sci-fi version of Fallout or Skyrim. You know, like since one is a fantasy, one's like post-apocalyptic, they could do like a space one. That never surfaced, and I was mostly just disappointed. Anybody else?
Well, what else? What did they do? Because you just said they didn't do this.
I don't
but
really.
They had to
I
have
don't know
done
anything
something.
about good and evil, but that's a show or that's a game that Zareen here is really excited about. And
So how can you be pessimistic on the conference when you didn't watch the thing that they announced?
it wasn't Ubisoft. The control room just said it was Ubisoft that Good and Evil was in, but that's not true. Good and Evil was in the Bethesda one last night.
Okay, but
Ubisoft was today.
But you didn't see it, so how do you know it was good or bad?
What?
You said like
I haven't played Good and Evil, so I don't care about it. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's my point.
I thought you watched the conference where they talked about that thing, and so you could actually have an opinion on it.
No, but I don't care about it, so I don't have an opinion on it. You know what I mean? Like Madden might be exciting for certain people, but when it shows up, I usually use that as an opportunity to go do something else. Take that, Madden.
I got you.
All right. Finally, we have the best part of the show, which is Emily Rand's anime pick of the week. Emily, what do you got for us this week?
So usually I try to focus on things that I think have broad appeal and that people will actually, like, and that are interesting. And this week I'm picking something that's like actually highly questionable, and I don't think a lot of people like it, but I really like it. And that is going to be the first arc of the Monogatari series, and it's called Bake Monogatari. And I actually deliberated about this for a really long time because
It is a controversial
some
pick. I will
of
agree with that,
yes, Travis, I'm sure you
Do
know.
you know anything about it?
That's very controversial.
I can chime in on this one. Okay. I haven't seen it, but
Yeah, because I mean, for me personally, I think the way they adapt it visually is really interesting. And it's actually one of my favorite series of all time. So I just wanted to recommend something that I really like. I am fully expecting not a lot of people to like this because it does have a lot of like highly questionable content.
What is it?
So it's, from my understanding, and you can correct me here, it's like a bunch of ghost stories kind of, right?
It's basically like all of these, they call them like oddities, but basically like supernatural occurrences that happen in this town. And this one guy, like they are all attracted, not attracted, like attracted, but like they're attracted because of his presence, basically, to this town.
I heard it's visually super interesting. I've heard it's very thought provoking. But like,
is it horror?
No, it's
like supernatural mystery.
Yeah, kind of
like
thrillery.
Twin Peaks style.
It's kind of like
actually, yeah. I mean, not Twin Peaks style, but like it's very abstract and a lot of weird stuff happens. Yes,
and like we said, very visually interesting. And I heard the first season's good. The second season's really weird and borderline bad, and then the other ones after that are good.
Crunchyroll, please sponsor us. All right. Since we have enough time, we have another new weekly segment that we're possibly going to be adding. This one's by MarkZ, and this is now called MarkZ's Melee Moment of the Week. What do you got for us, Mark?
There's a very exciting set between this Falco player called Westballs and Mewtwo King, one of the gods, where Mewtwo King went to the ledge. And you can tell me if you follow this at all. Mewtwo King went to the ledge and stayed there basically.
Yeah, you just hold on.
Yeah, he just ledge stalled the entire match because he was ahead. And if the game times out, the person who's ahead wins. Westballs didn't know what to do really about it, so he stayed on the stage the entire time and did nothing, and the game timed out. And it was one of the most boring things to ever happen in Melee history in a matchup that is supposed to be really fun.
It's by percentage in stock, right? Who wins at the timeout?
Yeah.
So who won at the timeout?
Mewtwo King, because he just sat on the ledge.
Really?
They literally sat there until it like timed
And
out.
Westballs was like, I'm just going to show how stupid you are.
How lame you are.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
you're so lame you won't fight me. And then but he didn't do anything.
So
he just lost.
where did the community reception hit? Like,
everyone just wanted to...
Or both of them?
Everyone was just like, Melee's dead.
Oh,
that was the community reception. Because Melee's dead.
Well, we need to end our Melee series then.
Yeah, I mean, fire Tafo. Melee's dead.
It's over,
The scene
Tafo.
is over. I'm sad about it.
Well, this will be the last MarkZ's Melee
I
moment.
have
then.
one moment. Went out in the blaze of
Yeah.
glory where we timed out and did nothing.
Yeah. So do you think we'll see a change in the rule set in the future?
So that's what's being discussed a lot right now, just because these are two characters who traditionally have very interesting and fun matchups because it's like very aggressive and they combo the hell out of each other and it's fun to watch. And they just played it the lamest way possible. And what people are saying is that like if Melee evolves this way, if you want to call it that, evolving, it's not a super well just like optimized part of the game where if someone wants to play super lame, exactly what are your options, and like are the options that they're like, it could go into this area where like everyone starts doing this because it's just like people didn't want to play the game that way for a long time. So there's some people want a ledge grab limit where you can only like refresh your invulnerability on ledge a certain number of times.
It's probably, I mean, my feeling, my guess would be like this is the first time something like this has happened, right?
No, it's been an issue on and off for...
Maybe this most dramatic moment, though?
This is one of the more dramatic ones because usually it was this character Jigglypuff who would do it.
Right.
Or Mewtwo
Hungry
King.
Buff.
Mewtwo King famously has done this a lot with Marth, but usually people would go in and get aggressive at him because they get fed up for a little bit and then he'll kill them and everyone's like, oh, you're playing lame.
Right.
But this is the first time someone was like, no, I'm not going to come to you, kind of, in a high-level match with like... These...
But to be clear, Westballs was incentivized to go after him.
He was behind. He should be the one forcing the action.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he just didn't know what to do about it, so he just kind of did nothing. And it was sad and horrible to watch, and no one wants to watch that. So people are kind of comparing it to the shot clock in basketball.
Very good. All right. Well, that closes out the show. Let's go ahead and say goodbye, starting maybe with, maybe we can go to Kelsey in Shanghai.
Whoa!
I know, not you. You just talked too long. Kelsey, you have anything to say?
Hi. Not a whole lot. I talked a lot.
Where can people
It's good
find
stuff. Just follow me on Twitter at KARONMOSER. I'm starting to do weekly reviews of EU LCS. So if you're sad that we didn't talk about the G2 Fnatic series and the UL HGK series, which were extremely hype on this show, then you can go ahead and read like kind of some of my thoughts on this. And that's about it.
Why didn't we talk about those? I like the whole G2 draft
I was told
thing.
I was told we weren't really going to talk about games, so I didn't put them on the topic list.
Well,
but then
I mean, but
we opened
hypothetically,
this-
even like the whole leave up the other opponent's best stuff strategy of getting practice, I think would have been a fun topic.
We talked about lane swaps a while ago.
Sven answered that question though, where he was like, where he said that they didn't. What he said was he feels like they shouldn't ban it just because Fnatic are the only team that play it. I think that that's probably wrong because I think that combination is actually really good, and I don't know why other people don't play it. But so he says we shouldn't ban it because they're the only team that play it, so we shouldn't have to ban it against them, was kind of Sven's response. Also, he said that we actually had no idea what to play, and he said that Kog'Maw was probably bad into those situations and things like that in retrospect, so they actually did not know what they were doing, is effectively what happened with the
Kelsey, you've used up
high
your
level analytical debate by everyone, and then of course what always happens in esports when you ask the people involved, they're just like, I don't know.
We had no idea.
Yeah, it just kind of happened, and then we lost.
Perks just kind of came back the day before, we weren't.
Yeah, exactly. They were just like,
So, yeah.
Kelsey,
We're
you've used up
behind
your
on the
goodbye
patch,
time.
so it's-
We're moving on. Going in
Goodbye,
reverse order. Okay. Emily, what you got? Please, better than Kelsey.
I don't know. I have some stuff coming out from NA. I'm writing about Korea, so that should be fun. And you can follow me at League of Emily. Thanks for tuning in every week.
What's coming out of NA? What are you working on?
I had a really good interview with Aphromoo, actually, after the CLG loss. So it was really fun.
Nice. Well, it was really fun to talk to him after they lost.
I mean, I always feel bad because, I even got into the interview with him. I'm like, man, I feel like I always interview him after, really high highs or, really low lows. The ending of every single insane match
Very
they have,
emotional,
I always end up interviewing Aphromoo. But he is a really good interview, so.
Mark?
I've been slacking a little bit on my YouTube. I will be putting stuff out there this week for sure. Been a little hectic getting everything going for this season again between rebranding my other show and getting involved with Delta Fox and all that stuff. But I think I have my week figured out. So look forward to the Blame game this week. Am I allowed to say that on air?
It's coming back?
It's coming back after a 2-week hiatus or whatever it was, 3-week thing.
That's a very long
Who do we
time.
blame for that hiatus?
Me.
For me,
I didn't have enough work ethic.
For me, you can find me at Travis Gafford on Twitter. Lots of fun stuff going on there. And this is the show. It's a kind of light week. E3's happening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll be back next Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific.
Bye-bye.